I told you I've been at this for 40 years, and along the way I've had a chance to make some good friends. And one of my best friends I have a chance to introduce to you over the next minute. This man is not a nutritionist, not a medical doctor. He's a communicator, extremely effective communicator, as well as, and I can't say this too often, in the people I've met in life, I wish I could say it more, he's also one of the most honest people that I've ever met. Regardless, he has kind of the personality that I have, which is, I don't really care. I'm going to tell you what I believe and what I think is true. He did my first website. Yes, he did. You know, back in my archaic days when I would write you letters, when you wrote to me, I would write a little postcard back to you and so on. He came to me and said, you know, John, there's a whole new world out there. It's called the internet. And I'd like to design a website for you. I said, okay, why not? So he did it. He put the first McDougall website on the internet, and that must have been more than 20 years ago. I know that was a long time ago, that we go that far back. And I showed you 2 video presentations that he and I did together. Actually, all the technical work was done by our next speaker. Days of hard work, putting it together, synthesizing a message that I have, and making it so clear that no one could deny what I have to say. In fact, after the presentation that I gave last hour, Dr. Osner came up to me and said, you know, you could have gone on. He said, the fat, low carbohydrate promoters, he said, you haven't even touched the list. And he feels as strongly as I do about what's going on, and I very much look forward to what Dr. Osner has to say for us this weekend. But our next speaker, he's taken my words, my passion, and allowed me to more effectively communicate with you through the website, through the videos. He's also allowed me to be involved with his family, his mom and dad, and wife Sabrina, and children, the twins. Those of you who follow our website, you know all about his family. And those of you who go to Los Angeles for the annual fall vegan VegSource conference, you know this man very well. He's given me the opportunity to speak to people, not only in Los Angeles, but all around the world. And with great pleasure and honor, I'd like to welcome to the stage Jeff Nelson, high-tech guy.
Wow, thank you, John.
Have fun,
so
Jeff.
much. Thank you.
He almost looks like me, doesn't he? It's because we eat the same food.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, John. I appreciate it. Good evening. Hey there. I have to concur. The food was amazing, just those mashed potatoes. Thank God for Mary McDougall. Yeah. Before we start, I just wanted to tell you something that happened for a minute. Earlier this week, I got an email from Heather McDougall. Heather is, of course, runs these things for John. And she was an email that she sent out to all the speakers, and we were all BCC'd on it, and just had the schedule for what was going on this weekend. And when I looked at it, the email said, "Hello, doctors." So I looked at the schedule, and I noticed that every other speaker this weekend has a medical degree that you're going to be hearing from. And there's maybe 1 or 2, but those all have, you know, advanced degrees. And I'm the only one this weekend who doesn't have some, you know, medical degree or advanced degree. And what does that make me? Not in debt. Don't you love John McDougall? Yeah? He's my inspiration, and who would not be inspired by that? And don't you love Mary McDougall? There is no program without Mary. Don't you love Heather and Patrick and Craig? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it was like growing up as a McDougall? That's got to be crazy. In a good way, that's got to be crazy. But in a way, I feel like I am part McDougall, and I have been brought up as a McDougall because of the tremendous impact that John has had on me and my family, and really he changed the course of my life. John is also an incredible friend. He's like a wedding vow, you know, through sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer. And I want to tell you a story about my wife, Sabrina. A year and a half ago, she went out for a bike ride in the afternoon, and she called me from her cell phone about 10 minutes after going out, and I said, hello, and I didn't hear anything. Hello, Sabrina, hello, and she wasn't there, so she called right back, and I said, hello, Sabrina, and I said, you know, call me on the home phone, because my cell phone doesn't get good reception. And I hung up and I texted her, I said, call me on the home phone, and she texted me back, come to Lassen and Varial. And that's an intersection that's about a mile from our house. I said, okay, why? And she said, she got hit by a car. And I said, who? And she said, the woman whose phone I'm texting you from. So that's how I found out that Sabrina had been hit by a truck that went through a red light while she was riding her bicycle that afternoon. Sabrina was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks. She has had 5 surgeries, but she's alive and she's doing much better. But I was in the hospital with her for the first maybe 48 hours, and then I went home to take a shower, and I very quickly put a newsletter bulletin out on my list to let people know this had happened, but she's okay. And about 20 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was John McDougall. And John said, oh my God, I just saw this, you know, this is terrible. Listen, I would really like to speak with Sabrina, you know, personally, as soon as she feels, you know, that she's able. Please, you know, call me anytime. I want to talk to her. And so I went back to the hotel, and probably the next morning when she woke up, she said, I want to talk to John. Yes, you know, call him. So we got him on the phone. And John gave her this very personal, very sincere pep talk, I guess is what I would call it. He also went through, he said, okay, you know, this has happened to you. 3 weeks from now, you know, or 6 weeks from now, this is how you're going to feel. 3 months from now, this is what it's going to be. 6 months. So he gave her sort of these markers for, he gave her hope. You know, she was lying there helpless, and he actually called several times, like every other day he would call. And he was there, he was available to us because they give you so many drugs and want to do so many things. And we don't know, should she do this or not? So to be able to ask John, oh, they're putting her on this, is that okay? And most of the time John said, no, tell him no, don't do that. But sometimes he said, you know, yeah, that's normal. It just made us feel much better. And, you know, John shared his knowledge, he shared his time, and he shared his kindness. And it, you know, was just a really nice thing. We put on this conference every year in October, and last year, because of a scheduling thing, John couldn't be there. But about a week before the conference, he called me and he said, hey, if I come down on Sunday, would you have a slot for me? I said, yeah, of course, absolutely. He said, then I'm going to come down, but I'm really just coming down to see Sabrina. And so he came and he gave his talk, and then he and Sabrina kind of went off and spent the afternoon talking together. This is a shot of us last year when John came down. But John McDougall is a wonderful friend. So tonight I'm going to talk about Dr. McDougall's impact on me and my family, but I think that my family has also had a pretty major impact on John McDougall as well. Maybe not personally, but on the kind of work that he's doing. And he may not be doing the kind of work that he's doing if it weren't for my family. And to explain how my family has impacted Dr. McDougall, I have to go back 150 years approximately to 1865. This was a pivotal event in the fortunes of my family. And this is the Battle of Five Forks in the Civil War. And you look at this guy here. Does he look like he's on a cell phone? Doesn't he? Even when iPhone 7, I knew it. But you know, look how thin and trim these soldiers are. You know, I mean, they're suffering the deprivations of war, so maybe they didn't have as much to eat always, but I mean, they're all so fit and trim. And you know, do people look like that today? No, look at this. What happened? Here's an article, Army soldiers using liposuction to meet fitness standards. Now that's not radical, right? Change the food, that's radical. Okay, my talk isn't about the overweight military, but I want to explain why this battle was important to what Dr. McDougall does today. This is my great-great-grandfather, H.O. He went by, his name was Herman Ocean, and he was the 7th out of 8 children. He grew up on a farm in upstate New York, a little town called Stockbridge outside of Syracuse, and Stockbridge means a bridge for livestock, a livestock bridge. And H.O.'s parents were, they had a hog farm, and all the kids learned very young how to slaughter, dress, preserve, and sell meat, hog meat, pork. My great-great-grandfather, H.O., was destined to become a very sophisticated commodities trader and a finance whiz. He even ended up owning what is today one of the 10 largest banks in the world, but he started out a pig farmer. This is H.O.'s brother, P.D., or Philip Danforth, as he was called, went by P.D. When P.D. was 19, he fell in love with a local girl named Grace. He wasn't the only one. There were, I think, a lot of guys interested in Grace, but he was definitely in love with her. And one casual afternoon, he mentioned that some friends of his, some people he knew, were going out to California to the gold rush to seek their fortune. And Grace made some kind of offhanded comment like, oh, you should go too and make a fortune and then come back and buy me the biggest farm in Stockbridge. That night, P.D. went home and told his parents he was going to California. And they tried to dissuade him, but he was a very determined person. So they gave him a few $100s, which was a lot of money in those days. And he and these 3 other young guys set out for California walking. They walked to Kansas City, where P.D. bought a team of oxen and a cart. And subsequently, one of the guys died. One of the guys was killed. And when that happened, it really kind of fractured the whole trip. And the other 2 guys, not P.D., one was Matthew and the other was Bernard, they decided they wanted to go back to New York. They weren't going to go to California. P.D., he was determined to go. So they split up then, but not before P.D. wrote a letter to Grace, the girl that he loved, and gave it to Matthew and said, when you get back to New York, find her and give this to her. So P.D. got to Placerville, California in the fall of 1851. He very quickly realized that making his fortune in gold, that wasn't going to happen because it was 2 years after the gold rush had started. All the best claims were taken. There were lots and lots of busted miners who had come, like he had, from somewhere far away and failed. And there were a lot of desperate men and a higher than average amount of disreputable people. So, he wasn't on the farm anymore. Placerville had a zero tolerance policy for theft. You steal, you hang. And that's probably how it got the nickname of Hangtown, because of its reputation for hanging criminals. So P.D. ruled out theft as a career option, at least at that period of his life. So you had a 19-year-old kid. He got out there. He was determined to get rich and to go back and buy the farm and win the girl. And he looked at the situation, and he noticed that this was an integral part of mining. A sluice. A sluice is a canal, a constructed canal where they divert water. You need water to separate the ore from the mud, from the dirt. And every mine had a sluice, set up to bring water. So what Petey did with the money he had left, he hired a group of these unemployed men and he trained them. He gave each one different tasks that they were to do, and he would go into the different mines and set up to have his team come in. They were so efficient that what might take the miners themselves a couple of weeks to do, he could come in and his team could do it in 3 days. So this became his business, building sluices with his teams. And he was very successful and made a good profit on every one. At the end of 5 years, by 1856, he had saved $8,000. $8,000 in 1856, there's websites that can tell you the value of money and how much things are worth in today's money. And here is one. It shows that $8,000 in 1856 was worth anywhere from a couple $100,000 to $35 million in terms of the relative share of GDP and the buying power. So however you cut it, PD had some millions of dollars at age 24. It was time to go back to New York and get the girl. So when he got back to New York, though, Grace had married someone else. In fact, she married Matthew, the guy that was supposed to give her the letter. He never gave her the letter. So PD was disillusioned, and he really didn't have a reason to stay in New York, so he went to Milwaukee, where he had stopped and spent some time on his way back from California, and he bought his way into a business partnership there with another guy, supplying pork barrels. And pork barrels are just that. It's a barrel full of salted pork, and that was something he knew how to produce based on his upbringing. And people going out west, traveling, people going down the Mississippi, when there wasn't refrigeration, these were a valuable commodity. During the Civil War, their business flourished and did better because they supplied pork barrels to the Union Army, to the Northern Army. At the end of 1864, around December of 1864, PD traveled to Chicago to meet with his brother, my great-great-grandfather, H.O. And he had an idea, and he needed a partner. And H.O. by then was a very successful, financially successful trader in Chicago. And this is what he wanted to do. PD said that the Civil War was going to end soon. He felt the Civil War would be finished during the first quarter of 1865. He wanted to go to New York and make a futures contract with the government to sell 120,000 pork barrels in May of 1865 for the going price of $42 per pork barrel. And H.O. said, well, do you have 120,000? Well, no, but if the war is over, the price is going to fall out and we'll be able to find them and buy them and deliver 120,000. Now there was a little downside, which is that if you make a contract like that and May comes around and the war's still going and you can't fulfill it and you can only give them 5,000, not 120,000, it's called fraud. So, but they decided to take the chance. They felt confident that this was the right thing to do, so they did make that contract. Did I tell you what their last name was, what the last name of my great-great-grandfather and his brother was? It was Armour. And this is the story of how the Armour Meat Company was created. So, you can see why this battle was so important. This is a battle of Five Forks, April 1st, 1865, where 4,000 Confederate soldiers were captured. And that's what this is. This is April 2nd, showing some of those captured soldiers. And 8 days later was the Battle of Appomattox, where General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. And what happened after this? The bottom dropped out of pork barrels. They went from $42 to $18. And in May of 1865, my great-great-grandfather and his brother sold 120,000 pork barrels and netted a profit of $2.5 million. $2.5 million. So that was a lot of money in those days. In fact, it was anywhere from $500 million to $4 billion in today's money. This is a quote that I really like by Honoré de Balzac. It translates, "The secret of a success for which you are at a loss to account is a crime that has never been found out because it was properly executed." Another way it's translated is, "Behind every great fortune lies a crime." So PD did not commit any crimes in Placerville where you could get hanged. He was industrious, he was creative, he profited from the Civil War in a way that would probably make Halliburton blush today. And this $4 billion fortune set in motion Dr. McDougall's future career, and that's because PD and HO used this money to realize their ambition of creating the largest, most modern, most lucrative hog selling, and eventually selling every kind of meat, operation in the history of the world. And here's how it worked. At the end of the Civil War, the Armours saw a confluence of great herds of cattle in the West, plentiful grain, a train system which had grown up as the West had been populated, and the ability to bring cattle thousands of miles to a central location for mass slaughter on an assembly line. A lot of people think that Henry Ford pioneered the assembly line for the making of the Model T. But in fact, Henry Ford had spent a lot of time with my great-great-grandfather and his brother touring the Armour facility and seeing entire herds could be slaughtered, dressed, canned, and refrigerated, shipped out in an afternoon. And the Armours basically pioneered the assembly line, although it might more properly be called a disassembly line, since it was a meat packer. But they invented this very highly efficient system designed to ensure the maximum amount of speed and the minimum amount of skill required by the workers. And they basically created the industrialized modern food system and a mode of production that many other industries have copied. And the key concepts that we take for granted today were things that they created, like the division of labor, mass production, continuous flow, and standardized units of production. So it was just like PD, who was organizing these men to build sluices and giving them all specific things to make it work better. That's what they did in a slaughterhouse. So you can see these are some of the assembly line things. These are pictures from the Armour facility in the late 1800s. This is some film shot by Thomas Edison. It shows the stockyards in Chicago in 1897. This is a herd coming in to be slaughtered. This is an electric train that they had in the stockyards. They had a lot of electric trains. They had all sorts of conveyors to keep business moving. And Armour was famous for saying that they used everything but the squeal when they butchered pigs. So they had a company called Dial Soap Company. They made soap, they made furniture padding, they made lard, they made pharmaceuticals. They were able to slaughter 50,000 hogs a day, this one article talks about. So the Armour's biggest accomplishment was probably that they pioneered centralized production and national distribution. And so, for example, they were pioneers of canning meats, which when a time when there was no refrigeration, that was really a pretty big deal. They installed refrigeration in all of their factories so that it didn't matter year-round, they could slaughter, there'd be no spoilage. And perhaps the biggest asset, the biggest thing that they had was this, the refrigerated train car. They eventually had 12,000 of them, and they could bring their product to any part of the country. Before the Armours, food production was pretty much a local affair, and you ate what grew around you. You ate the animals maybe that were slaughtered, and seasonally you could eat certain things, you couldn't eat other things. But the Armours changed that with the train car because they could take 20 cars of meat to Atlanta and any time of the year. And they wouldn't bring those train cars back empty, by the way. They would buy peaches or whatever, some other produce or something to bring back so that they were continually trading. They were middlemen for almost every national transaction, and they amassed enormous fortunes, which they used to create monopolies. And they could roll their trains into any city, open up an outlet, drop the prices down so they were selling at a loss, do that for a year, drive all the local businesses, competitors out of business because they couldn't sustain it, and then they'd own the market. And they did this, and they actually conspired with Swift and Cudahy and the other meat packers of the day. And in fact, in the early 1900s, they were indicted, the Armours were indicted, for violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act based on testimony that they'd given before the Senate. They were represented by a very skilled lawyer of the day who argued that the Armours should be able to invoke their Fifth Amendment, self-protection retroactively for testimony they'd already given. And of course, the papers of the day, the media made fun of it. Here's one, Armour wants an immunity bath. The other indicted meat packers will make the same request. Well, sometimes justice, a special justice, is available to the rich, and the Armours and their co-conspirators did get their retroactive immunity, and all the charges were dropped. Here is some promotional material because you don't just make a business by making a great product. You have to convince people constantly that it's a great product. And this is the Armour Livestock Bridge. It says Armour bridges the gap between the livestock producer and the consumer. So on the right are the livestock. On the left, you see the packages magically, neatly going off. And in the middle on the bridge, that's where Armour does his work, whatever it is. We're not really seeing it. This is another one. The packer is a judicious capitalist using a golden scale to match, to weigh support against demand. And notice the image behind him. On the left is the producer. You see the cattle and the cowboys out on the range. On the right is the consumer. You see little cars taking the product. And again, behind is the packer, and it's red. It's solid. We don't see it. That's because people don't want to see what the packer's doing. This is a map called Armours Food Source Map. It says the greatness of the United States is founded on agriculture. This map is really typical of the Armours thinking and how they organize things. They go to Placerville, okay, sluices, we'll go make money there. The Civil War, hey, we can sell pork barrels and make a fortune. This is looking at the whole United States and thinking, if we have the whole country to play with, how can we exploit it to our maximum benefit? And this map was distributed in schools starting in 1922, by the way. This is really a statement about the food system that the Armours envisioned and were actively creating. So you can see text down here that describes they have different areas where particular foods or products are best raised, sheep, hogs, cattle, and so on. Certain regions are better for other types of crops. Some places like New England aren't well suited to agriculture, but they're perfect for manufacturing. So this is all on this thing. And here's one of it says the perspective, because nearly all industries depend on agriculture, the propensity of the entire nation, the prosperity of the entire nation is inseparably linked with the marketing of meat and other animal products through the packing industry. And it's signed by my great uncle. And this was looking at the United States as a company, and the Armours were the CEOs, because their vision, which was sort of a transformative vision really, was to take the US from a patchwork of local economies to a national growth powerhouse. And it was the invention of the assembly line that's really at the root of the story, and that was copied by many other industries. The Armours consciously went out and worked to destroy local economies in order to create national economies for huge businesses. At the time, that was considered a success. So it was my not too distant ancestors who set the stage for a McDonald's 49-cent hamburger and a 69-cent cheeseburger, which is available with this coupon in Miami. And thanks to the Armours, now everybody can have meat 3 times a day. We can become as portly and well-fed as the richest banker or aristocrat. And next time someone tells you that eating meat is natural, understand that the access to the amount of meat that we have is anything but natural. It was the result of long-term thinking by some brilliant businessmen and marketers. And I do want to mention that all of the Armours, there were 2 brothers, and then there were other brothers brought into the business, all died in their 60s of heart disease. So a boy set out in 1851 to make money so he could woo a girl. And all of us grew up eating meat as a result, and here we are at the McDougall Advanced Study Weekend. Thank you, PD. This is Jane Livingston Armour. She was the wife of my great-great-grandfather. She was actually the 4th wife, because 2 of his wives died in childbirth, another one died, and this is the 4th wife, and she was a full generation younger. In fact, when my mother was born, this woman was alive. She was still alive. So my mom, who's almost 90 years old, she knew the wife of H.O., the man who started this whole industry and changed the industrialized meat business. And this is just to say how close this history is, how few generations it's been since people started eating like this. And it's really just a blink in terms of our evolutionary history. My mom is here tonight. Where are you, Mom? Mary Armour Nelson, stand up for a second, Mom. So my mom grew up in a mansion built by the Armour meat fortune, and today she is a McDougall vegan. And this is her picture, which I meant to show. So how did that happen? How did that happen? Well, before I met John McDougall, this is what I was doing.
Racing to the bottom.
Not all the way.
For Michelob Light.
You're on.
Would good friends really go at it this hard just for a beer? Well, consider it's Michelob Light, and that means a rich...
Okay, Michelob Light. That was the first television commercial I ever produced in 1980. I went on to produce over 600 nationally televised commercials for just about every company out there at one time or another. I went into long-form TV, and I worked with Samuel Jackson, where he played a runaway slave. I worked with Burt Lancaster and Richard Crenna on a 4-hour miniseries for NBC based on the Ken Follett novel. Since meeting Dr. McDougall, my work has taken a slightly different direction. The programs that I've produced have included some low-income neighborhoods where there's an awful lot of sickness that could be addressed with food. And I'm going to give you one example.
I started having high blood pressure when I was in my 40s. And since then, it was always high, but as I've gotten older, it was getting higher. And so my doctors were monitoring me. And I had been on that blood pressure medicine for over 22 years. This program done something for me that the medical industry couldn't do for me. This program done something for me in 4 days. 4 days, I was off of my blood pressure medicine. You know? So when I started it, and 4 days, we started April the 8th. April the 12th was my doctor's appointment. And I went in there, and she took my blood pressure, because it had been running like 160 over 104, and it was going up, and they had upped my medication. And then when I started this vegan program, it went down, it was 123 over 78. And she says, oh, I think that the medicine that the doctor gave you is working. I go like, no, it's the food. And it really was the food, you know. I mean, I've been searching for a long time. I spent a lot of money at the health stores. I really did, trying to find out what was good for me. I hadn't had pork in like 38 years, but I was still eating chicken and turkey and fish. And I wasn't doing too well. I was spending all this money on noni juice. I was spending money on spirulina, my calcium pills, all this money I was spending. And all I needed to know was that I needed to eat this plant-based, strong, density low diet. It was just so simple. I'm going like, wow, I didn't have that one puzzle that was missing. And this is it, you know. I don't see myself going back to ever eating the way that I was eating because of the fact that I'm medicine free right now, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I get up in the mornings and I could just leave my house. I don't have to worry about, oh, did I take that blood pressure medicine? No, I'm feeling good right now. I'm feeling really good.
So basically, I went from making Jell-O pudding pop commercials with Bill Cosby, and I could tell you some stories, to creating health programs for low-income communities. And this happened because John McDougall came into our life. And the way he came into our life is that 21 years ago, my wife had burning on her ears and blistering like a terrible sunburn. She bounced around to different doctors and ended up in the office of this man, Rodney Bluestone, who's a reumatologist on North Bedford and Beverly Hills. He diagnosed Sabrina with a rare autoimmune disease called relapsing polychondritis. It's a disease where your immune system attacks the cartilage. It's painful. There's no known cause. There's no known cure. It has a 55% survival rate after 10 years, which means Sabrina had a 45% chance of dying by 2005. Dr. Bluestone said, I can't do anything for you, but I can teach you how to live with it, and that meant drugs. So for about a year, she took drugs and saw Dr. Bluestone every month, until she stumbled across a book that was in our bookshelf that someone had given us that she had never read. And she, one day while she was having a flare-up, she started reading through this book, and very excitedly she came downstairs and she said, listen to this. And she read a portion of the book where Dr. McDougall talks about lupus and how lupus can be arrested with a plant-based diet, a low-fat plant-based diet, a vegan diet. And she said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go vegan. I said, okay, well, I guess if you're doing it, then. So 3 weeks later, she had her next meeting, her next appointment with Dr. Bluestone. And for the first time in a year, her SED rate was normal. The anti-nuclear antibodies, which is an indirect measurement of the disease, were not present. After 3 months of going back each month and getting those same results, Dr. Bluestone said, "You're in remission." So he also said, "Your cholesterol is 135, your dietary strategy is working, and it's been working for the past 20 years. Thank you." So, yeah. This is Dr. Trentham. He's the leading expert in relapsing polychondritis in the country. He's done a number of large-scale studies. When we found out about him, Sabrina wrote him a letter and said, I changed my diet. I think it's the reason I got well. I'd like to offer my medical records and everything for you to study, and to study me, because I really do think it had to do with the diet. Dr. Trentham called. He phoned Sabrina and said, "Oh, I know Dr. Bluestone. He and I wrote a paper. You got great care. The vegan diet, how can you stand it?" And Sabrina said, "Well, how could I stand all those drugs? I actually like the diet." And Dr. Trentham says, "Well, the disease, it waxes and wanes. We don't really know. I don't want to jinx you. So thank you very much. Goodbye." And he wasn't particularly interested. So we made a website. This is very early, probably around 96 when we first did this. We bought the name relapsingpolychondritis.com, so it would come up better in the search engines, and Sabrina put her story up there. And over the past time since this has gone up, Sabrina has gotten hundreds of emails from people saying things like, "Oh my God, I got this diagnosis. I've spent all day on the internet. Yours was the only site that gave me any hope. I'm going to try this diet." Or emails like, "I've been McDougalling now for 6 months. I totally put my RP, my relapsing polychondritis, into remission," or "I'm down to only a quarter of the medication," or "I now don't have asthma anymore." We had one woman who flew 5,000 miles just to meet the woman who saved her life, is what she said, to meet Sabrina, because she had also put her relapsing polychondritis into remission. So this was 1996, early days of the internet. And we went online and looked for, communities of people that eat this way, of vegans and vegetarians, and we were a little disappointed in what we found, at least, what we came across in those early days. It seemed to be a higher proportion of smug, superior people who were vegan, a little judgmental. Maybe they didn't have a sense of humor. It wasn't us, so we kind of did what PD might have done. We said, let's make our own website. So we opened a site called VegSource. We dedicated it to John and Dale Robbins and to John and Mary McDougall, who had a big influence on us. It was our form of kitchen activism. We felt like Sabrina had dodged a bullet. We were just a mom and pop at home, but when the universe does something nice to you and something good happens, maybe you have a responsibility to turn around and do something for someone else. So we wanted to help spread the word about how powerful diet really is and changing your diet can be. We had found it out. This is what the site looked like when we opened it back in 1996. This is what the site looks like today. And as John said, we knew, and we're starting to know, a number of people like John who were promoting plant-based eating, and for all the many good reasons to do so, but many of them weren't yet on the internet, or they didn't have much of a presence. So we began to reach out and people we admired, and identify organizations and places we supported, and look to help get them on the internet. We offered to build them websites for free, host them on our servers, maintain them, but of course it was theirs. They could take it. It wasn't ours. We were just trying to make our site so that people could come and find out not just about one doctor, but all the doctors. So this is a list of some of the people we've made sites for: Howard Lyman, McDougall, Greger, Clapper, Esselstyn, Colin Campbell, Novick, Furman, Atwood, Neil Bernard. We made the site for Farm Sanctuary, Vegan Outreach, and so on. For some people we made sites, for others we just found other ways to try to support. But our vision was to make VegSource sort of the hub of the wheel, where if you came and searched for John McDougall, you could also find links to Dean Ornish, or to Jeff Novick, or to Joel Furman. And the idea was VegSource wasn't about us, but it was a way to point people to other people in this niche so that everybody could learn more about it. And we used a lot of kind of guerrilla marketing techniques, and we ended up getting a lot of free publicity and a whole lot of traffic to our website. For example, we were hacked once. There was like a flame war between some gun website and the hippie vegetarians, I guess. And our server was hacked, and our website was destroyed. The FBI even got involved and seized someone's server to investigate. But articles were written about it. This was in Salon.com, I think the BBC, the Wall Street Journal. So we got more famous and we got more traffic when things like this happened. 2001 was 5 years being on the internet. We decided, hey, we have to have a party to celebrate 5 years of VegSource. So we booked a room in a local restaurant and put up a notice on the internet. Within a week, we had 150 people that had signed up. So we said, oh, we need to move this to a hotel and not just have a dinner. Let's invite some of these people that we admire to come in and we can sit at their feet and they can talk to us. So in 2001, we put on our first conference. You can see some of the people. John was there, Colin Campbell was there, John Robbins, Howard Lyman, Mary McDougall was there, and several others. And people had flown in from London, from Korea, from Japan. I mean, we were shocked. We were really surprised. You don't know who you're reaching when you're on the internet. And people absolutely loved meeting these people and hearing what they had to say. And we realized, hey, we got to do this conference every year, not every 5 years, because... And so each year we'd bring in William Castelli, Marion Nessel, Dean Ornish, always Dr. McDougall, people would always bring in. And we've been doing it for 15 years now and still going strong. And just like the Advanced Study Weekend, the purpose is to educate, inspire, help people recharge, help people take action, and to have fun. And I would like to think we inspired John McDougall a little bit, because 4 or 5 years after we started this, he started his weekend. And of course, because he's John, he has to do it so much better than the rest of us. But so 1 year before the conference, we said, you know what, let's make a film. Let's make a film. We got these guys coming for the weekend. I'm going to take each one of them into a room, and I'm going to ask them 20 questions, the same 20 questions. Then we'll see what we get. We'll edit together. We did that. We made a film called Process People it was 40 minutes long, plus 3 hours of extended interviews. And we just stuck it up on our website, and we sold about 100,000 copies. We had military doctors buying them by the case. It basically went all over the planet. It got into schools, libraries, film festivals. I mean, we didn't even really try. It just sort of took off on its own and went viral. Another year at the expo, we were thinking, people that come to a program like this, you have to buy a ticket to be here. You probably bought a plane ticket to fly here. You had to pay for a hotel to come here. There's a lot of people in the world that could really use this information who there's no way they can ever do that. And my wife was the one that was talking about it. She was talking about it because my sister and brother-in-law work in a food bank in Sacramento. And so Sabrina came up with the idea of Meals for Health. Let's take a weekend program like this and then make it like a 30-day program and take it into a low-income area and help people who could never in a million years get this information. And so we took essentially Team McDougall into the Sacramento Food Bank, Dr. McDougall, Dr. Lyle, Novick, Clapper, Rip Esselstyn, Chef AJ, a bunch of other people. We had food coaches who were volunteers that split the people into groups of 5, and they each had a food coach who kind of understood the program. We had free medical care. Everyone got physicals at the beginning and end and had a doctor that was available to them. We gave them free food, enough food for their whole family to eat this way for a month. We wanted to make it as easy as possible and to take away excuses for them that they might fail. And we didn't want to just be a bunch of white coats coming in and talking to these people, so we wanted it to be nice. We had nice linens and flowers and lighting, make it a nice experience. We didn't know what to expect. We had no idea whether it would stick, what the people would be like. It was enormously successful. I showed you just one of the many, many stories there a moment ago. People got off their medications. They went out and got jobs for the first times in years because they felt better. Several people did. The next one we did was in Oakland, the Progressive Missionary Baptist Church, which is in Berkeley and serves Oakland, Richmond, and the East Bay. We brought in the experts, and here's what happened.
We we heard about it. They announced it in the church, and people who were interested in feeling better and eating better, we all were supposed to come to this meeting. So I went to the meeting.
So I was chosen as one of the participants. And the night we met, they gave out a book. And I thought, this is good, this sounds good. I still don't know what it's all about. Hadn't heard the word vegan. Good thing I didn't, because I probably said, oh, I heard of that. I wouldn't have come. I probably would not have come.
Rosemary went home and she called me and said, have you read the book? They're gonna make us vegans. I said, you read the book wrong, Rosemary. They are not gonna make all these folks in this church vegans. No way.
I just want to say thank you, Amy, for all your help, for the emails, phone calls, the recipes, and thank all of you for coming to Progressive. I have been able to get off my diabetes medicine, and I no longer am a diabetic, and I'm so thankful for that.
Meals for Health has really, truly been a blessing. I'm off of all my medications now. I was on high blood pressure medicine.
Thanks to Esther, because when she first come to me with this, I said, boo. I didn't hardly want to be bothered with it. And you know, she would always give me little notes and things and telling me about this and that. I said, I'm not thinking about Esther. I love meat and I'm going to eat meat. Do you know I haven't had a piece of meat in 30 days? And I was around some barbecue about a week ago, and I thought, how in the world am I going to be able to be around this barbecue and potato salad? Do you know I ignored it? And here I am. And another thing, I'm off most of my medication, not all of it. And I used to couldn't go to bed unless I had to have some pain pills. I haven't had a pain pill. My knee haven't hurt me. I feel much better. And I thank God for this program.
22.5 pounds she lost in 28 days. That is nearly a pound a day.
When I started this program, I didn't know what to expect, but when they said no meat, I didn't get that at first either. I thought we could at least eat chicken or something. But I stuck to it and did what I had to do. I prayed on it and I did everything that I was supposed to do. So I can now say, besides the weight loss, my cholesterol dropped like 50-something. My blood pressure went from 160 to 125, so I'm going to continue on.
I never thought after I got diagnosed with lupus, which caused me to go into kidney failure, that I would ever feel normal. Ever, honestly. Waking up tired every day, in pain every day, having your hair come out, and I came out of the hospital with 26 pills a day and a shot that I gave myself in my belly, and I never thought that my life would be different. My medications would change, but pretty much the fatigue and just feeling so less than myself just kind of remained the same. The very first weekend, with the exception of the horrendous gas that I had, that very first weekend, that Friday, that Saturday, that Sunday, that Monday morning, I woke up by myself at 5:30. I woke up without pain, and I noticed it, because when you have lupus, you notice things like that. I sat up in my bed, and Monday is an off day for me. I got a cup of coffee, because Jeff said he would not give us a hard time about the 1 cup of coffee. So I got the coffee, I went out on the deck outside, and I just sat there, and I cried, because I just was like, I cannot believe I just got up by myself, and I wanted to get up, and I don't have any pain. And so it's been like that for me. My energy level is, everybody noticed my energy level, especially my coworkers, because they were like, I don't know if we can handle you going back to the way you were. My attention, my focus, I'm off 2 of my medications, and I have secretly tapered down some of my other ones. So I just feel very grateful, and overwhelmed, because I really didn't, I knew I would feel better, but I didn't believe I could feel this much better in such a short amount of time. It is just miraculous. So I just thank God. I thank this program.
I've been so inspired by what has happened. I have talked to 4 of my pastor friends about this program, and they are interested. And so we will get them the information, because I can tell you all of the overweight people and sick people are not in this church. They are in a whole bunch of churches, because we love to eat. And so thank you very much.
Dr. Don Forrester is the medical director of Meals for Health. Dr. Don Forrester is the medical director of Meals for Health. John McDougall introduced me to him. He's gone back to these programs. He's gone back several times to the church, because this program was a couple of years ago, and I think the last time 85 or maybe it's 87% of the people in the group are still following the program. They're still McDougalling. So it's stuck. It's a success. Dr. Forrester, by the way, is an amazing guy. He's here tonight. Don, where are you? Stand up, would you, Don? There he is in the back, Don Forrester. And Don's generosity knows no bounds. He just puts in so much to this program, and everybody who participates in Meals for Health, by the way, does so as a volunteer. So it's such an amazing feeling to go in and help people. You help yourself when you do that. It's just a wonderful thing, and they think that you did something magical, and all you did was say, no, don't eat that, eat this, and they did, and they got so much better. One of the things that really feels wonderful is when you can help your family. And my father had a massive heart attack. The left anterior descending is called the widowmaker. It's almost 100% of the time it kills you because it just shuts off the blood. He was in the emergency room when it happened, so he was very lucky. They whisked my mom out of there and got the paddles and restarted his heart and rushed him into the cath lab, and they saved his life. But he had damage to his heart and so on, and some people thought, he's only got some weeks or months left. And he had been a McDougaller at a certain time. They maybe loosened it up a little before that, but he was determined that he was going to do it 1,000% now. And in fact, my parents hired a cook, someone who my dad would email, on the starch solution page 327, Mary's gazpacho soup or whatever, and he put that in an email for the whole week, and the cook would come over and drop these things off once or twice a week. Anyhow, he lived 5 years longer, until the age of 93. He died last year with no heart disease. So thank you, John McDougall, for that extra time with my father. These are my daughters, my twin daughters, Nina and Randa. They grew up McDougalling, never had any acne until about age 20, when it came on almost overnight and very severe. They tried everything, antibiotics, facials, topicals, multiple dermatologists. None of it worked. They were told their only hope was Accutane. So they basically said, help me, Obi-Wan McDougall, you're my only help. You're my only hope. And Dr. McDougall said, eliminate the peanut butter, stop with the avocados, eliminate the soy, the nuts, no overt fats at all. And it worked very quickly for them. It worked so well that they made a video about it on their YouTube channel, which went viral and got picked up worldwide. Here's an article about it, the first one that was in a London media outlet. And this article, this story and pictures went around the world in like 20 different languages. The girls have about 400,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel and a whole section devoted to healthy McDougall style eating. So the Armours had a way of looking how to make something bigger and more successful. It was the gold rush, and then sluices. It was pork barrels, making money from the Civil War, automation, refrigerated train cars, and monopolies. The Armours were always evolving and growing. And so our approach with veganism is, and a healthy diet, is that we try to evolve too. We started with a website. We gathered together experts to create an online community. We founded a conference. We made a documentary. We did Meals for Health. So where are we going next? we've decided to hang out with our kids. Social media is the place for the growth of plant-based diet, vegan diet. And in fact, there are thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of young people going onto YouTube to learn about the vegan diet from other young people. And some of the information that these YouTubers that they're teaching is really good, and some of it is cringeworthy. As John said, it's good intentions with bad information. So we're sort of have been looking at the state of veganism on YouTube, and it's a little toxic in some ways. And not all the information could be better, because you hear people saying something and someone else repeating sort of these myths, and what someone says, bad information can go viral. So we thought, let's shake it up. We put on our conference. We're having it next month. We're having Dr. McDougall and Craig McDougall and Mary McDougall and Neil Bernard and Dr. Goldhammer and Dr. Don. We have a big slate of really great experts. We thought, why don't we try to bring some of these YouTube influencers over for the weekend to meet it? And so we made a YouTube video saying, hey, we're going to bring some people over. We're going to pay for it. Would you like to come to California and be part of this conference? If so, make a video about why we should pick you. And we struck gold. We got almost 60 videos from all over the world and really some extraordinary kids. And here's just a taste of some of the people who applied.
I know my viewers have so many questions. If I was to be nominated, they would have so many questions that they would like to ask as well.
So yeah, it'd just be amazing to be around like-minded people. Just like being around, I only eat plant-based because I don't like acne all over my whole face. I'm just excited to go and learn about this stuff and come back to Egypt, come back to my Muslim Arab community who don't know much about this stuff, who when I decided to cut out to be a vegetarian like back in October were like, are you crazy?
I live on a budget, mainly because it's the cheapest way to live in London. I want all my money, all my energies and all my efforts to go into vegan projects.
To get to meet all those doctors and learn all that information, it would just be completely incredible to be able to bring that back with us.
Come from a past of depression, and actually overcame my depression, major depression disorder, through a vegan diet.
A lot of people in Russia believe that veganism is a mental disorder classifying as self-harming behavior, and the reason for that is because several newspapers once published an article that World Health Organization added veganism to a new classification of diseases. Of course, that's not true, and World Health Organization even said that on their website, but Russian people still believe that.
I struggled a lot with my eating, like binge eating, restricting. All this changed when I started eating vegan and eating plant-based. I really feel a sense of belonging now in the world. I want to spread the vegan message. That is my purpose.
Honestly, I admire John McDougall so much. He's honestly my biggest inspiration, the thing that has really saved me from my eating disorder.
You know, here in Mexico we have a lot of issues that could be solved, and or the veganism could just help. Like, we are the #1 country in obesity, in child obesity. We are dying of heart disease.
I am a vegan medical student and I am Aboriginal Australian. I chose this place because it has a high population of Indigenous people, and I have the opportunity to run a workshop there over the whole entire year at one of the high schools. With the students, and I really want to run a workshop on healthy eating.
It's basically my passion to help people. That's what I love to do, and I love learning about veganism and everything about it so that I can take that knowledge, apply it to myself, and also use it to help others.
So several of these YouTubers and several others that have applied are going to be coming, and we're still working with some sponsors to see if we can raise funds to bring even more of these kids, because I really think this is the next frontier. And if there's anyone here who's interested in writing a check to sponsor one of these kids, see me after the talk. But just one of these YouTubers has the potential, as they grow, to reach hundreds of thousands or even millions of young people. And these are people who want to stay well, they want to get well, they want to start when they're young. Okay, this is one of the guys who's coming. Last thing I want to say, I just happened to come across a documentary over this weekend while I was looking at Amazon Video. And this was a film about the assassination of President James Garfield. He was, I think it was in 1881. And it was really fascinating. He was shot twice, and today we would consider it a superficial wound. He would be in and out of the hospital and back in business in a short time. But Garfield died of sepsis, and he was killed by awful doctoring, not really by the bullets. And you see there's an English surgeon by the name of Joseph Lister, and he had shown at the time through studies that by washing your hands and washing the wound and washing the surgical equipment that you were going to operate with, you could tremendously lower fatal infections. That it was just, washing was like, wow, we need to wash. But Garfield's doctor, he was asked by other doctors, aren't you washing the wound? Aren't you washing your hands? He thought it was radical. He thought it was unconventional. He thought it was unproven. And he refused. He said, I'm only sticking with conventional medicine here. And as a result, Garfield suffered immensely for 11 weeks before dying of this infection. So I wonder how much things have changed from the 1880s and that kind of doctor and some of the doctors we have today. Conventional medicine means if you have heart disease, we're going to break your chest open and we're going to give you drugs, and ultimately you're probably going to get sicker and die of heart disease. And people feel disconnected and disempowered in our medical system. They aren't given many options. A good patient is basically somebody who does what the doctor says. And that, in my opinion, though, does not include all of you. You guys are here because you're open to the unconventional. You're open to what's up and coming and what actually turns out to be true. Many people, I'm afraid, have doctors who are like President Garfield's doctor today. Can eating a whole food plant-based diet really cure people of serious diseases? Many doctors don't think so, or they don't know so, or they see it as radical or unconventional or unproven. So they advise the conventional route. But to me, going the conventional route is almost just, accepting failure. And I know that the one thing the Armours never accepted was failure. The Armours, it's not to say they never failed, but they always tried to pull success out of what could be considered a failure. And I think that if the Armour brothers were around today, they would probably be here this weekend learning from Dr. McDougall, what actually works, because that was something that they were very interested in, what works. And they would probably, own the vegan diet. They'd be franchising and getting rich off it or something. But you don't have to be an Armour to take advantage of Dr. McDougall's radical, unconventional approach. You have the opportunity to be radically healthy. And just by being conscious about what you put on your plate. We don't need the Armours here to work on this problem. That's because John McDougall has himself and the many speakers that he's collected this weekend are working to turn what's unconventional into what's conventional, and I'm certain that that's going to happen. Thank you very much.
So we have some time for some questions. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Jeff. That was an excellent talk.
Thanks.
Anyone?
Okay. You can find me on the web and ask questions of me there.
Why didn't I know this about you before? Jeff, over here.
What?
No, to your right.
Oh, John.
Yeah,
hey.
This is where the crowd is, over here. I've known you for 25 years, and I never had any idea. I'd heard the name Armour, but I've been so enlightened by history and what your family caused and contributed, and in some way you must feel like you owe the world a flip of the coin, considering, anyway, thank you, it was just excellent. Anybody have any questions for Jeff Nelson? Scott?
I went to VegSource one year and it was wonderful. And after I went, it seemed like you were going to stop doing it, and then you sort of resurged. Is that an accurate assessment, or did that happen?
We took a year off. We did take a year off in there. I think 2008, maybe we took the year off. Yeah. Every couple of years we say it's the last one. We've had it. It's too much work or whatever. But I have to say it's a little easier, doing this than what John McDougall is like worrying all weekend long about. I don't mean it's easy, but it's a little. Now I'm done, so I can sit back and enjoy the weekend.
It did have a real party feel, though. It was really interesting. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Well, Jeff, you set the tone for the rest of the weekend. Our friendship goes deep, and I am certainly grateful for what you've shared with us this evening. And Mom, it's been good knowing you for 20 years too. Yeah. I've had a chance to be involved in the Nelson family, as you've heard. I asked Jeff to minimize my involvement, but the pleasure I've gained in terms of helping the Nelsons and helping you folks has been more reward than you can imagine. As I've said before, the real gift in life is helping other people. That's where pleasure comes. And I want to thank all of you for the kind comments you've made to me so far, and the warm welcome you gave to Jeff Nelson. And both Jeff and I would like to hear your comments this weekend. If you come up to us and say something to the effect, or any of the doctors, Dr. Forrester, Matt Letterman, Anthony Lim, my son Craig, you come up to us and you say, I bet you're tired of hearing this. No, we're not. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, guys. Good night.